we're going to talk a little bit about mixing color. I've just been using my Artist Loft brand inexpensive beginner set of watercolors. They give you a very wide range of paint colors on this, but suppose you want to make something look very natural. Well, when we look at a tree, it doesn't look all the same color green. There's shadows, there's variations in the leaves, and there's bark and twigs. And so a good rule of thumb is when you're painting something and you want it to look natural and you're using a color family like green, you want to use at least 3 different shades of green. Well, this set has 5 shades of green, but what if I was just using one green paint and I wanted to make some variation to it? I could add in some of the complementary color, which for green would be a red or an orange, and you might get a little more of a brown tinge in your green. You can also add analogous colors on either side to vary the shade lighter or darker. When you're painting an area on your picture and you need to make colors, not just go straight from the pan, you want to go ahead and mix your colors first before you start putting water down on the paper. Because if you put the water down and then you go to mix your color, and maybe it takes you a little while to get colors you really like with trial and error, then you come back to your paper and it's dry. So you have to re-wet it. So you might as well just mix your paint first and then wet your page. Also, I talked a little bit about how watercolorists rarely use the color white. The white is used up quite a bit on mine because I actually like to mix a little bit of the white in with my gel crayon to make them a lighter shade. With watercolor, you just want to add more water to make them more translucent to get a lighter shade. The other color that watercolorists don't use very often is black. Unless you're almost doing like a cartoon print or something like that, where you want a really flat black on the page. In nature, you rarely see something that absent of color with just plain black. So one of the ways you can mix a black color that looks more natural would be to mix 3 colors of the primaries or the tertiary colors on the wheel. So if I mix red, blue, and yellow, I'm going to get almost a black, but it's not going to be such an intense flat black. It's going to have more depth. You can also do the same with the tertiaries by taking a lime green and a lavender and an orange red, and when you combine them, they're also going to kind of create a different color black. And so that's just a way you can add a little artistry and natural color to your paintings. I'm going to finish by doing 2 exercises that we did when the group met to demonstrate the transparency of watercolor and how to layer the colors over and let you get a feel for how to do that. So basically, I'm going to just make some water circles on my page. To start, I'm probably just going to do 3. And if you don't feel comfortable just putting water down on the page, you're not sure you can make a circle or see it if you're just painting with water, you can very, very lightly with a pencil trace around something round and give yourself some circles on your page. You just want to remember that pencil or graphite, when water touches it, it reacts with the water and it becomes almost impossible to erase. So you want to keep your lines very, very light. Now that I have my 3 circles, I'm going to just lay down a different color in each. And my brush is pretty wet and the page is wet, and so the color should be very nice and translucent. And I'm really looking for a flat wash here, meaning it should all be about the same grade. I'm not doing shading on these because we're just going to use it as an exercise to see how the paint is translucent. The fun thing about this is you could literally use this as a background and do some lettering over the top of it, and it would be pretty. Okay, so now what am I going to do? You guessed it, I'm going to let them dry completely. Now it's dry. So now I'm going to layer color over the top. So I used a wet on wet technique for these first circles. When you're layering a transparent color over the top, you probably want to go ahead and use a wet on dry technique. So I'm not going to smear water on the page, I'm just going to lay down my next color. And I want to make sure that part of my new circle that I'm laying down overlaps with the one underneath. Okay, you can see that you can still see some of the yellow through. We're getting almost an orange effect here. We're barely seeing that blue because the yellow is a much more intense color than the light blue. And we're getting some, almost a purple tinge right on the edge of that. So anyway, this is just a fun way to create a background and play with how the transparent colors work together. We did some circles and we overlapped them so that we could show the transparency of the paint, and we were very careful to let them dry completely. So you can see through each layer to the layers below. Now we're going to do a little bit of a blending with some geometric shapes where we actually are going to let the paint run together, and that's just to see how the paint reacts that way. And we did that a bit in the first series of watercolor videos that I did where we did washes and we let colors run together to make ombre washes. In this video, I'm just going to do some little geometric shapes and just let the corners run together. So this is a wet on wet technique, just laying down some water on my dictionary page, and I'm going to come in with just lay down some color and see how it's running into the next square. That's what I actually want it to do, and I'm hoping that when I lay down the next color, it will also do a little back running too. Let's see. So see, I actually kind of want this where these corners touch. I want them to, the paint to kind of be drawn into each other's squares. and just laying down some water on the page right up to the edge of that other, touching the edge of the other square and giving it a chance to move and do what it wants. Again, you just want to probably use analogous colors for this because as they're mixing together, you don't want to be, well, unless you want brown, which if you mix the complementary or put the complementary colors next to each other, they'll make brown. And watercolors, they will flow some on the Bible pages. They will flow even more if you're using watercolor paper, of course. If you know the general principles in watercolor, you can make it work in your Bible pages. So now I'm gonna actually do some wet on dry. I'm going to do some triangles. And I'm just going to put them down wet paint, dry paper, and then I'm going to go back in and add some water to let them blend. So just another way you can do this. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and drop some water in here. Right at that connecting point and just beyond. So that water is going to pull the paint across and kind of get the blue running into the reddish colors, kind of making some purples. One of the other videos I was talking about how you can just add more water to lighten the color of the paint rather than adding in white, which is going to make it less opaque. So you can see if I just put water in my brush and just pick up a little bit of this color and spread it over here, it actually makes it a lighter pink. can see some of the blue is pulling down into there. It's just what I wanted. So you can kind of touch it or let it go. I know with the Bible pages, you can't really, I mean, this is a dictionary page, so it's loose, and so I could pick it up and move it around a little bit to let the color run a little harder with the Bible pages. As you can kind of see, while it's still wet, I can tip it and manipulate where the color's running. So anyway, that you could do these, you know, little tiny triangles or little tiny squares as a background, and then after it dries, come in and do some lettering over it. But this gives you an idea, or you could do, if you wanted flower petals to kind of blend into the center, you can use the same technique for that.